train to the Plastic Underground. Approaching the station, please stand away from the Platinum Head.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Plastic Underground. A couple weeks ago, a little bit more than that probably, I started working on my Mando costume again. It's been a while. It's been sitting around on the shelf. Last time I showed you guys how I went about making the Mando gloves. So I figured I would just kind of keep going up the arm essentially, and been kind of putting off like the beskar stuff for a while just because I've been kind of intimidated by it. But I kind of watched a bunch of people make their own versions and different painting and stuff. I knew like spending $80 for a little bottle of Alumoluster was like not obviously something I wanted to do. So I ended up getting pretty good results with just some plastidip and some clear glossifier plastidip, and then graphite on top of that. And so here, for example, here's the rocket gauntlet, and it actually has a really nice like shine to it. It has a really good like it looks like beskar to me. It's not a mirror finish, but I didn't really want like a full mirror finish either. I didn't want it to reflect a lot for, you know, like pictures, or if you're going to use it in like videos or whatever. But what's interesting about the plastidip is that the glossifier is a little like sticky almost. It's not like your hand would stick to it, but it's really rubbery. It's more rubbery than like plastidip. So actually what ends up happening is the graphite on top, it actually like adheres to it more. So I don't feel like I have to clear coat on top of this to protect the graphite. I know a lot of people who do the graphite on 3D prints, they have to clear coat it because it'll just come off on your fingers if you touch it. But you know, maybe this does a little bit, but not to the point where like you know, like one pass and your hand's gonna be covered. I haven't seen any stuff come off, and I've had these for a little bit now. So yeah. So these mine are just force fit. They just fit right on. I didn't want to like do the clamshell. I didn't want to do all that. So these just fit on, and I'll probably like Velcro these to the actual arm, like sleeve of the actual costume, so that they don't, so they don't like turn like that, So there's the rocket, and this one, this is like the grapple hook and stuff when it's on this one. Flamethrower, I think. I'm not 100% sure. So yeah, here's my two Mando gauntlets. Came out pretty cool. We're going to use the same technique on the shoulders, the chest plate, and the shin guards. So maybe a jetpack. I don't know. Not committing to a jetpack. But anyway, that's how I made it. I hope you guys kind of like the process, see how I did it, and maybe this gives you a couple ideas for your Mando build.
Okay, so to start off here, starting with the base of the gauntlets, the actual gauntlets themselves. The patterns for you guys have been fixed on these. Originally I didn't have these little triangle darts, and they didn't quite fit right, so I added those. So now the template is fixed. So I just glued those together. I marked the center of the top. And then this is some 6mm foam for the base piece, and then some 2mm detail piece on top. This piece of 6mm gets beveled and then glued on top of that. So then this little detail piece in the front, I just cut a 45-degree cut one way, and then I just go right on top of the ridge, and I cut a 45 the other way to make a little triangle piece, little pyramid. And then that gets glued right there. I glue it a long piece on there just so I can trim it later to fit better. This is just a little square rectangle piece, some more 6mm foam. So this is 5mm craft foam for the base, and then that top detail square is 2mm, and that makes up the little light box there. This little detail piece that goes on the top, this is some 2mm craft foam, and then after that you can glue this in place. You can see I marked out where I wanted it to glue so that I can just glue that spot, and I glue that in place. Then I can glue this little trim piece on this box, just using super glue for that, and same thing with this little detail piece here on top. And then that little piece right there goes in the front, and then I glue the light box on the back. Then this piece of 2mm foam gets glued on the left side, and this just makes up a little bit of like a panel, and those pen lines will get cut with a razor knife and heated up just to make more panel lines. There is a little bit of detail pieces that need to go on top of that. This is a little piece of 6mm foam that gets glued to that long shape there. Then I go through and I trim the top piece here. A couple little spots that needed to be trimmed. I fixed these in the template for you guys. That piece there just was a little bit of a different shape, but the top of that box has a 45-degree bevel on it, and so I cut it and sand it, and then this little piece here can fit against that bevel pretty good. So using a little bit of 6mm foam and make this box shape. It's almost like a half cylinder, but somehow it's square too. The one on the other gauntlet is like actually more like box shape. So using a little bit of these dowels I bought a long time ago. These are just like little plastic dowels I bought at the hobby store. I think these are for like scale model making and that kind of stuff. So I have this bigger one, I have this little thinner one here, and so I glue the little one inside the big one, and that kind of gives me the pipe that I was going for. I glue a little bit of 2mm foam, basically just like little circles on, and that acts like little details, like little panels and ridges and stuff. Then I glue that inside the little cylinder piece there. And then I glue this 2mm foam on top of that cylinder piece. The reason I did that was because it gets a couple panel lines, and also I cut this long so that it will hang over the edge there to show depth in the cylinder. So you can see here I'm cutting in those panel lines, just like I always do with the heat gun. And then so the bottom gets this little detail panel. So the easiest way to do that is I just cut that section off, and I glued some 2mm foam in the bottom. So on the other side, I ended up using the pieces that I cut out, the 6mm foam to cut out, and I just glued those in the same spot. I was worried at first doing that because I didn't think my arm would fit in there because it would be thicker on the bottom, but it didn't matter. There's enough space in here where that does not affect the fit. So now moving on to the other gauntlet here, it's the same thing as the other side, except this top piece has a little bit different shape, and that is also marked for you guys. The other difference is that I use the heat gun to really kind of form a square. So the top piece is flat, and then the side pieces curve down, just so the rocket and everything sits flush to that. So there is the basic gauntlet shape for the left hand, the rocket gauntlet. So this top detail piece here gets beveled in the front, and this little square box goes in the front. I think that was 4mm, and the square piece is 6mm. This is a little technique recently heard about and learned about, and I remembered that I had a hole puncher from a long time ago. So just using some like 2mm or almost 1mm craft foam, like cheap craft foam, I'm able to hole punch these little shapes out. So I just go through and I glue those all in place on top of this little box. So then gluing this piece down here, the front is flush and the back overhangs a little bit. Then I just use a little bit of super glue here, and I glue that box shape in the front there. Make sure you glue it in the right way. It's supposed to be square, but sometimes your cuts aren't always perfect. These 2mm detail pieces get glued on the side of this panel. So one on that side and one on this side. So this is a tube here that I had left over. I usually keep all my tubes and stuff. This is from a Cricut vinyl roll, and it ended up being like the perfect size. So I cut that to the shape I want, and then I cut out some 6mm foam for the end caps, and then I wrap it with this cheap 1mm foam. It's important to make sure everything is the same texture. If this was like a piece of PVC or a piece of cardboard, the paint would finish different and it would look different from the rest of everything that is foam. So it's important to make sure everything is the same texture, the same material, and that way everything looks the same when it's painted. I've made that mistake before. So these caps go front and back. The front cap is two pieces glued together because it sits outward a little bit. The actual rocket tip, I glued 3 pieces of 10mm foam together, and by the time I sanded it and cut it, I was left with basically 20 millimeters. So that's how I marked it on the template. It's just a 20mm, 2 pieces of 10 glued together. That's plenty. I went a little crazy at first, but you can see how I just kind of shape that and bevel it with my Dremel and just get it to the shape I like. So after that's made, I can mark where that rocket goes so that I know exactly where to put these 6mm detail ridges that go on top. These almost kind of look like they hold the rocket in place. You kind of keep it framed. So that's what I'm doing with these. So this little piece here goes in the front. You can see I went through with my blade and just kind of scored it. I got kind of lucky there. That piece I scored too deep gets cut off. Then the front gets this little 2mm detail ridge. Then I can glue the rocket assembly on top of the gauntlet. I line that up to the back. I'm pretty sure that's how it is. It might sit inside a little bit, but little details like that I don't think anybody really will pick up on. So this is some 3mm foam. This gets glued to the side and bent over and glued to the top of those 6mm frame pieces. And now some more 2mm detail. These get glued on the side. I always try to cut everything long, and then I can just trim it to where it needs to be. I just feel like that's always easier. And then I can kind of give a little angle cut too, just to make it a little bit different, a little bit more interesting than just a straight cut. An angle looks a little better. So the rocket tip now gets glued on the front. You can see I used a Sharpie to mark where the actual like whistling birds come out. And then just using this little bit on my Dremel, I think this is like a little, oh man, it's like a little like carving bit, and I'm just gluing, so I'm just dremeling those in place. So now this is the assembly for the little box that goes on the side. I kind of made this pattern, so for 6mm foam and with just a couple little bevel cuts, you kind of make this it's essentially just a skeleton. It's just the framework for this box. So I glue that all together first. Then I go through and I glue this on. There's also a mark here where there's a panel line on the Gauntlet, and that's where I glue that to. It's supposed to sit against that. So then I go through with some more 2mm craft foam, and I just glue that into place, just to give it a nice texture on top, no seams. And then I can put my panel lines on that as well. So here's some panel lines on the Gauntlet itself. These get cut out, these little squares. These get cut out on both sides. This is what I was talking about a little earlier when I was saying that you can just cut these and just glue them recessed. It does not affect the thickness on the inside for your arm. At least for me it didn't. And it works out better than putting 2mm foam behind it. So same with these. These get glued in a little bit recessed. And I do the same thing with the bottom of the Gauntlet. This Gauntlet itself has got more detail, and it took me more time, obviously, because the rocket is a little bit more complicated, and then the actual Gauntlet itself has got so many like panel lines and textures to it that it took me a little bit more time to work on. So I kind of do the same thing. I just go through and I cut this to be a recessed panel. In that spot, obviously, cutting the recess made it too big to fit in there, so I just trimmed that little section off, and then I just glued it into place. And then this whole piece here gets cut off and glued back in. This piece also gets these 2mm detail pieces that almost kind of look like strapping on the inside. I think they're just panels. But so I cut that out first, add a little bit of glue to that, and then I just use some scrap 2mm foam just to glue on top. And then I could trim those in place a little bit later after the glue's dry. And then after those are trimmed, you can glue it back into place. Gluing it flush to that front piece there, because that piece is recessed too. And then the sides here, they get glued down a little bit. The 2mm detail pieces that you put on top should almost be flush to the top of the Gauntlet. But you also want a little bit of you want space for that to glue to on the side. You don't want it to be basically held into place by a millimeter of foam. So it's this kind of balance between visually and also making sure that it's like structurally sound. And that's it for the Gauntlet. Now I try it on, make sure it still fits. So now going through with a little bit of quick seal. This is like for bathroom caulking and like showers and stuff. It dries pretty quick, and I just put a little bit on in places where there's like a seam or a gap, and then I just use a little bit of water. This is my paint water. That's why it's a little dirty. And then I just use a little bit of water on my finger just to kind of smooth it out, and then I try to like blend it out into the foam. I don't just leave a line. I try to like blend it outwards. So 3 coats of plastidip black. for the base. And then over that, I use this plastidip flexible glossifier. This is a gloss clear plastidip. I think technically what this stuff is really for is like if you've plastidipped something on your car, like your badges or your rims a while ago, and they get dull from the sun, you can spray this top coat on, and it basically makes it look like new. So the thing I wanted to do in this is I've seen a lot of people do graphite, and I didn't want to buy a giant bottle of graphite powder for like $20 and see that it didn't work and be like just have this whole box of graphite. So I have tons of these graphite pencils, and I have a whole box of like art supplies basically. And this is a pencil I don't use very often, and you can see there all I did is I just kind of rubbed it on some sandpaper, and yeah, I use these little cotton balls to just kind of rub it in. And when the cotton ball starts to stick to the plastidip, I just get a little bit more graphite. So I rub that all in first with the cotton ball, and then I take a clean cotton ball and I go over it and I just kind of buff it and just kind of burnish the graphite to shine it up a little bit, and also remove any excess graphite. Now the cool thing about this on this plastidip here is I almost feel like that glossifier really holds the graphite in place. It's kind of sticky enough and tacky enough to really adhere that graphite. So I think these came out really good for being foam, and I was happy to be able to use that graphite technique. And to me, it looks like beskar, so I was like really happy with these. And you know, I thought, man, I'm gonna burn through this pencil, but I did both of these gauntlets, and I think you can see on the pencil there, I literally only sanded down the like tip that was sharpened on that. That was it. So I got a lot more armor pieces to go, and I got a lot more pencil left, so I think I'm good. The screen on top here, I just kind of did this quick. I might go through and redo this a little bit later. I just took a piece of cardstock and I painted it red and just kind of put it in there, and I added this little screen plastic piece on top. I think later on I might go through and I might cut this out on the vinyl cutter. I might actually cut out some of the like numbers just so it looks like there's a display in it. But yeah, that is the gauntlets for the Mando build. I hope you guys liked the video, and I'll see you next time.